There is a myth that has been orbiting our planet longer than any human-made machine. A story whispered in amateur radio forums, discussed in hushed tones by conspiracy theorists, and ultimately captured in a series of shocking photographs by NASA itself. It is called the Black Knight satellite. According to the legend, it is an alien artifact, a cold, silent observer, 13,000 years old, moving in a polar orbit that no human technology could achieve until decades after it was first detected. Is it a guardian? A reconnaissance drone from a distant star system? Or is it something much, much simpler? Welcome to HistoryKove. Today, we're diving into one of the most enduring, complex, and frustrating mysteries of the space age. We're going to trace the entire convoluted timeline of the Black Knight satellite, from the Victorian era to the digital age. We'll explore the wild theories about its purpose. And then, finally, we will separate the legend from the lethal reality of the facts. This is the complete history of the Black Knight. The story of the Black Knight doesn't start in space, but on the ground, with the birth of wireless communication. We begin in 1899. The eccentric genius Nikola Tesla was at his lab in Colorado Springs, experimenting with a magnifying transmitter, a massive high-frequency transformer. He was tracking lightning storms, but in the silences, he picked up something else. Tesla reported receiving a series of unusual rhythmic signals on his equipment. He described them as counting codes, 1, 2, 3. They were too structured to be random atmospheric noise. Tesla became convinced he was listening to the greeting of one planet to another, specifically Mars. Tesla never claimed it was a satellite, but believers retrospectively linked these signals to the Black Knight. But the weirdness didn't stop there. In 1927, an amateur radio operator in Oslo, Norway, named Jørgen Hals, noticed a bizarre phenomenon. When he transmitted a signal, he occasionally heard a distinct echo of his own transmission, returning several seconds later. Hals had discovered long-delayed echoes, or LDS. In the 1920s, this was inexplicable. In a world before satellite relays, radio waves shouldn't take 3 to 15 seconds to bounce back. The delay was long enough for a signal to travel to the moon and back several times. It was as if something somewhere in near-Earth space was amplifying and rebroadcasting our own signals. The Black Knight legend truly began to take shape during the tense paranoia of the Cold War. In 1954, newspapers across the U.S. carried sensational headlines. Retired U.S. Air Force Major Donald Keyhoe, a prominent UFO researcher, claimed that the Air Force had detected 2 artificial satellites orbiting Earth. The shockwave was immediate. At this time, neither the United States nor the Soviet Union had the technology to launch a satellite. If they were artificial, they had to be extraterrestrial. These claims, however, were never substantiated by government sources. But the seeds of suspicion were planted. 6 years later, the mystery intensified. In February 1960, the U.S. Navy's new Dark Fence radar system, designed to track silent spy satellites, detected a dark object moving in a polar orbit. This was crucial. To enter a polar orbit, a rocket has to travel north-south, counter to the Earth's rotation. It requires far more energy than a standard east-west equatorial orbit. In 1960, human capability for polar orbits was in its extreme infancy. The dark object became a sensation. Was it a Soviet spy tool? Or was it the ancient sentinel that Kehoe had warned about? For the next decade, the legend simmered. It wasn't until 1973 that it received its most famous decoding. Scottish author and astronomer Duncan Lunan attempted to find a pattern in the long-delayed echoes Hals had heard in the 1920s. Lunan plotted the time delay of the echoes against the order they were received. His startling conclusion: the echoes weren't random. They were forming a map. Lunan claimed this map showed the constellation Boötes as it would have appeared 13,000 years ago. Specifically, he interpreted the message as identifying the satellite's origin, the double star system Epsilon Boötes. The message allegedly read, "Start here. Our home is Epsilon Boötes, which is a double star. We live on the 6th planet of 7. Lunan hypothesized that the satellite was a dormant Bracewell probe, an unmanned emissary from an advanced civilization, programmed to monitor Earth and attempt communication once we developed radio technology. The 13,000-year timeline fit with many ancient human myths of watchers from the sky. The Black Knight now had an origin, a date, and a purpose. It was no longer just space junk. It was the Sentinel. But the ultimate evidence was still to come. In December 1998, during the Space Shuttle mission, ATS-88, the crew was assembling the first pieces of the International Space Station. They were installing thermal insulation on the American Unity module. During a spacewalk, the astronauts spotted it. They snapped a series of 570mm photographs. When these images were released, the internet exploded. This was it. The Black Knight, captured in high definition by NASA itself. It was clearly non-aerodynamic, strangely irregular, and pure black. Conspiracy theorists pointed to its shape as undeniable proof of advanced alien architecture, unconstrained by the need for atmosphere. NASA's website catalogued the object as STS-088-724-66, classifying it as space debris. But for believers, this was the cover-up of the century. We had photographed the Sentinel. This is where history demands we stop listening to the legend and start looking at the evidence. The Black Knight satellite is not a Sentinel. It is not an alien machine. And it is definitely not 13,000 years old. The story of the Black Knight is what happens when you take 5 completely unrelated historical events, stretch them until they fit a specific narrative, and stew them on the internet. Let's look at the facts. Fact 1. Tesla and Hals. The legend. They heard the Black Knight. The truth. Tesla was listening to powerful, structured natural signals, now believed to be from the magnetic field of Jupiter's moon, Io, interacting with its parent planet. Hals discovered LDEs. Scientists now believe LDS are caused by terrestrial radio waves being trapped in plasma ducts in the upper atmosphere, bouncing around the globe before returning. They are of Earth origin, not from a lunar distance. Fact 2. Duncan Lunan's message. The legend. He decoded a message from Epsilon Boötes. The truth. Even Duncan Lunan himself withdrew his theory. He admitted that he had based his initial analysis on inaccurate charts and that the supposed map didn't align with reality. Fact 3. The 1960 polar object. The legend. It was the alien Sentinel. The truth. The object was identified weeks later. It was a space derelict, the remains of the U.S. Air Force Discoverer 8 spy satellite. Part of the Corona program, the capsule had strayed during its re-entry attempt and was moving in a higher, silent orbit than intended. Fact 4. The NASA photos. The legend, a photo of the alien satellite. The truth. NASA engineer and space historian James Oberg, who worked on the STS-88 trajectory design team, has shown conclusively what the object is. During the spacewalk to attach thermal covers, one of the thermal blankets got away from astronaut Jerry Ross. STS-88 Commander Robert Cabana can be heard on transmission saying, "Jerry, one of the thermal covers got away from you." The twisting shape in the photo is that simple blanket. It re-entered Earth's atmosphere a few days later and was destroyed. The truth is far more ordinary than the legend, but no less fascinating. The Black Knight is a digital campfire story, a myth patched together from misunderstood radio science, Cold War debris, and a lost thermal blanket. The real tragedy isn't that we're being watched by aliens, but how much lethal debris we have left in our own backyard. Thanks for visiting HistoryKove. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please like the video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Which legend would you like us to unmask next? We'll see you in the past.